Good afternoon, and welcome to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio in the heart of Caribbean Flatbush. With your host, Pamela Capalid, a certified financial planner here to help take the bite out of your budget. Brunchandbudget.com. I'm your sound provider, Dialect, and here's your host, Pamela Capalid.
Thank you, Dialect. Is it Caribbean, not Caribbean? I've been saying
both.
it wrong?
It's both and neither.
So whatever comes out is fine. One or the other, right?
Yeah. Just roll wherever your tongue takes you.
That sounds like good advice. So, last week we talked about the Stuyvesant kid, the kid who claimed that he made $72 million in the stock market over a couple years. And
just hearing that number makes me want to do the Dr. Evil thing.
$72 million.
Exactly. Put your pinkies up.
Pinkies up. Well, pinkies down because it was all a lie.
That's gonna be the new trend.
Pinkies down.
When you lying, pinkies down. So.
He made it all up. And he was able to dupe lots of people. He was able to dupe the reporter from New York Magazine, Jessica Pressler. And the story went viral before people were like, wait a minute, something's fishy here. It was in Business Insider. It was on all the news channels, CNN. We saw it everywhere. And when you Google it, actually, the hoax, for the last couple of days when we were researching it, the hoax doesn't come up before the actual article of him claiming that he did it.
That's how it is. Well, don't worry. I'm sure 30 or so years from now, Tom Hanks' grandson is going to play him in a movie.
Well, it's funny that you say that, actually, because the kids actually have a quote about this is what they said. It's not good what we did, but we are still inspired. We still want to pursue doing business together as individuals. Him and his friend were in on this. We still want to be successful and make money or make our parents proud. I think if they were to make a movie about this, it would be about the end, not the beginning.
Oh, that's funny. No, it's only going to be about the beginning.
Yeah. No
one cares where y'all are going to end up.
Yeah.
Also, to point out, we were talking about last week about how it was one of those faux rags to riches stories.
Yeah, and we love those.
And we love those. And before we even talk about why we love those, remember that his friend was the one who was bankrolling all this.
Yeah.
This was the one who was paying. His friend
for
is
the
he's the son of some
dinners.
royalty.
Yeah.
And he was paying for caviar dinners. He was paying for fancy car rentals. He was paying for the PR people.
Mm-hmm.
So even this fake instance of not actually having money but making it seem like you had money so that people could give you props for having money started out with having money.
Yeah, and this guy who started having money is the one who made who's the one who made that quote. Mr. Tulimaganabitov.
It's okay. You can mispronounce his name.
Okay,
as much of a jerk as that kid was.
Lots of letters, and it doesn't really matter. And that's the thing, though. Is
not that his pronunciation of his name doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he doesn't matter. Pinky's down. Well, that's the thing that we talked about last week a little bit. Was it wasn't just that this kid lied and was able to dupe, lots of people. It was that he was able to do it because we wanted to believe it. We love rags to riches stories. We love the Horatio Alger American dream. You start with nothing, you end up with something. You end up big.
What was that name? Horatio Alger.
Horatio Alger, yes.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about him. That's the concept, because he didn't come up with the American dream, but it's the basis of what the American dream is from, right?
Yeah, he didn't come up with the phrase, but he wrote a lot of stories where the American dream concept comes from. The idea of being able to rise above your station in life. That's the big thing, is to rise above your current social class. America came from, Britain. All of the Pilgrims came from a place where it was an aristocracy. It was, you were royalty, you were a knight, you were an aristocrat, or you were a serf or a peasant. And the idea of a peasant becoming an aristocrat or becoming wealthy was just not possible.
Well, it was a fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. Like The Prince and the Pauper, that kind of stuff. And Horatio Alger, while his stories were all fiction, because they were told in America and because of the American dream concept, people took it as, not morality stories, but stories that were more something that, oh, this could happen to me.
Well, fiction is how we convince people to do things. The whole question of whether art imitates life or life imitates art is not a question. Life imitates art. Case in point, we were talking about Wall Street, Wolf of Wall Street, and all that kind of stuff. You know that people didn't look and act like they did in the movie Wall Street until the movie Wall Street, and now that's how everybody looks and acts? So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Gordon Gekko. No, he made the slick back hair and and even in American Psycho, Christian Bale.
There were no psychos in America before that.
No, not before
Thank
that.
you,
No, the
Christian
parody
Bale.
of that is a response to the fact that is what Wall Street has looked like for so long, and it's because of that mythology that was created by this story that was completely fiction.
And that's kind of what went on with the Serratio Alger, John, is that it became such rousing, empowering stories.
Yeah.
It became a thing where, well, why not let that be true?
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? And we've all heard the stories, we've all seen it happen. It's as
and
if
America did have quite the reputation for many years.
Yeah, definitely. It's why people came here, because there wasn't that social sort of caste system that was in Great Britain or in other monarchies,
And to be specific, it's the idea that you can move to this country with nothing and create a brand new life for yourself, where you have removed yourself from the caste system through your own skill and effort. It's not the same thing as someone walking into your neighborhood and finding you beautiful and making you rich, because that's always happened in every country, everywhere. It's not someone with money coming into your area and finding your art or your athletic ability,
right,
or anything that is a non-job skill, and deciding that you should be the one, because that happened everywhere. That happens everywhere, and that is a thing that still happens today. I think the difficulty is, last week we were playing the Coffrey J joint when he was talking about all these rappers acting like they're claiming that they came from nothing and made something out of themselves, which is a misnomer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's the biggest thing. That's a great point, because it isn't about necessarily like the specific talent or skill you have that has been and will always be marketable. It's not a sports talent you have, or a face talent, I guess.
The American dream is about your effort, your will.
Yeah, you work super hard, and you put in all the effort, and you too will succeed. And that's it. That's all it takes,
With what is given you, without any tricks, without any tax loopholes. Those things aren't the American dream.
Yeah, and I mean, there were some Horatio Alger stories where they had like a wealthy benefactor in some cases, but for the most part, it was these young boys pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. I'm sure you've heard that term before, but straight up pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and going from a poor class to just middle class even, by going above their station. And that is one of the reasons why we wanted to believe the Stuyvesant Kid. His story is like every rags to riches story that we've heard. He was hardworking, he had immigrant parents, and he somehow figured out how to make it. And he figured out how to make it when he was 17. Like, every component of the story is the stuff of movies, I mean, I think that his friend who said that they were going to, like, if they made a movie about this someday, it was coming from a place of they make movies about this. They make movies about these kinds of stories, about people coming up and pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and it's inspiring, and we all want to believe it. And we're kind of addicted to it. We love hearing these stories, and we want to believe that could be us someday too. We're great at putting ourselves in other people's shoes in that case, and we're sold this American dream. And we're gonna go into a song in a minute, but this show is about whether or not that's even possible anymore, and whether it was possible at some point, and what happened in between. Can we still achieve the American dream? What does that even mean? And and it means different things to different people, but why is it still this huge cultural, this huge cultural thing that we just accept that is a possibility. And I feel like that it blinds a lot of people into addressing the real issues that are at hand for most of America. Like, yes, you have these great rags to riches stories that make it in the paper and make it into movies, but at the same time, you have hundreds of millions of other Americans who that story does not represent them or their daily life at all.
Okay, so to give a quick wrap-up of the answers to that is A, no you can't, B, yes you used to could, and C, mostly education and rich folks setting regulations. To listen to more, you're going to have to listen to more. But until then, we're going to give you, we're going to start with some song about the American dream. This is a brother named John Gives, and this is his rap song about what he thinks the American dream is. We're going to have some dueling American dreaming on the radio here for y'all to decide for yourselves. So check out John Gibbs and his version, and we'll be back in a moment with Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio.
I believe we can keep the promise of our founding. The idea that if you're willing to work hard, it doesn't matter who you are, or where you come from, or what you look like, or where you love. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, or Hispanic, or Asian, or Native American, or young or old, or rich or poor, able, disabled, gay or straight. You can make it here in America if you're willing to try.
Believe that. American dream telling me I need that. More money, more problems, where the weed at? Pull me up a cup of Hennessy and relax.
We live in a generation where the lies look good enough to lie in them, get your mind took. My cousin caught a DUI and got his ride took. The homie in and out of prison cause the price of a squared away life is too risky. Give me some whiskey, I'ma pull it up. Drop a 4 in the 20 ounce and slow it up. Pop a couple pills in the bathroom, throwing up. Pass out, wake up in the morning, now I'm rolling up. These are just the patterns of the 80s, past to the 90s, babies. Everybody underneath the influence, crash babies. Home of the free and land of the brave. If it's one nation under God, how we still slaves to the grave for the next high. But we living solo, one control, sex drive, Austin Power mojo, baby boom promo, say it on the screen, television broadcast, pregnancy at 16, the American dream. Can you see the ramparts we watch? We're so gallantly streaming, starving or bursting bombs, the American dream. Oh, the American dream. Everything ain't always what it seems, but we still lean on the generation where the Benjamin Franks fly whips and gold chains is religion. Give thanks. Pimping from the pulpit, the wolves out to play. Only $9.99 for the pain to go away. Peter pop off, give me the drop off, I'ma make it flip. Am I a profit for the way I profit all these chips? Baby puppet for a real one on stripper poles. Taking off her clothes, really she losing all her soul. For a man she doesn't know. It's the pattern of the 80s, past to the 90s, babies. Everybody underneath the influence, crash babies. Home of the free and land of the lame. If it's one nation under God, why we ain't changed? Break the chains for a real high. No more living solo. Tell them what it feel like. Awesome power mojo. Baby boom promo. Say it on the screen. Television broadcast. Legacy at 16. The American dream. Can you see the ramparts we watch? We're so gallantly streaming. Starving or bursting bombs. The American dream. Oh, the American dream. Everything ain't always what it seems, but we still lean on American dreams. Can you see the ramparts we watch? We're so gallantly streaming, starving or bursting bombs. The American dream. Oh, the American dream. Everything ain't always what it seems, but we still lean on American dreams.
Believe that. American dream telling me I need that. More money, more problems, where the weed at? Pull me up a cup of Hennessy and relax.
In America, you either dying to live or living to die. Or wherever else for that matter. Choose wisely.
Welcome back to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio. That was John Gibbs with his version of the American Dream. I will give you a hint. His is the more optimistic of the ones that I'm going to be rocking. And even that one was straight full of truth and honesty about how difficult things are for folks.
Yeah.
The concept of the American dream is often one free of obstacles, and one that is it's a very selfish thing because it's all about you and your ability to do stuff, and it ignores the context of the world that we live in. And it's something to think about how we are living. What's the big phrase that we've been saying for the past couple of years now? Income inequality, the 1%, the 99%. What is the wealth gap? What are these things? How do these things actually affect us, and how do they affect our dreams?
Yeah, I mean, and has it always been this way in this country, you know? With this American dream and the proof of it, I feel like had to come from somewhere, too.
Right.
That's the other thing. And, you know, and we love the idea of it, and it's part of the sell for America. It's part of why people come here in the first place, is that promise of it. And the interesting thing is that other industrialized nations, other, you know, first world nations don't have this concept of the American dream. They make enough money to pay their bills and raise their families. They know that they probably won't get super rich one day, but they're comfortable and they know that they can take care of themselves, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me of the idea of, again, when we were younger, maybe even beyond our generation, the idea of kids wanting to grow up to be firemen and police officers and people who work in noble professions. People wanted to be doctors not because they paid a lot, but because that was an impressive, difficult, and noble profession.
Yeah, you were helping people, you know. Even the postman at some point was a noble profession.
Well, you know, the doctor's thing, I mean, there's this God complex stuff that comes in there that you get to feel whether or not you're making a ton. There are all these social advantages, and nowadays, we've talked about this a lot, we don't work with many students who want a job that conveys social advantages. They want a job that conveys financial advantages.
Right.
They want to be the CEO of whatever.
Of whatever it is.
They want to trade. They want to work in finance.
Yeah. And they want a job that will make them money for the sake of making money. You know, because that's, again, and we've talked about this on the show before, the idea of money becoming the end goal instead of money being the means to the end. And that's what's kind of, this shift has happened there too, which is kind of scary, is the idea of money being the thing that you want instead of the thing that can get you what you want.
And to explain another vocab term that we were just talking about, the income inequality thing deals with our lack of a middle class.
Yes.
It deals with the idea that not only do the smallest percentage, either the 1% or the 10% or whoever you want to cut it up, owning a majority of the money that's out there.
Yeah,
you know,
they own, so the 1% of America has 20% of the wealth.
Right.
In the United States.
So the 1% owning the 20%, and these percentages, they don't matter as much as what matters is that the majority of people who were once considered middle class are now below that.
Yeah.
Or above it, and you're getting squeezed. And the middle class, the American dream that has been discussed of getting enough to raise yourself out of your station of poverty, the reason why you would leave your country, the reason why you would embark on your own with just
with
$1 in
nothing.
your pocket or whatever the phrase is because in America you were able to take yourself out of poverty and put yourself in this middle class place. Now the middle class, unless you were already born there, is beginning with this generation here being much more difficult to enter.
Yeah, and I think people are realizing that. The reason why it feels like that the American dream is still alive, though, is there are two schools of thought on what the American dream is. The first is what you describe about, you know, rising out of poverty and becoming a part of the middle class. And the other, which I think is where this kind of fantasy comes in and where it keeps this dream alive, is that you're going to become really rich. So, you know, people are starting to realize, reality-wise, that middle class is something that's becoming harder and harder to attain. But on the flip side, there are people who are like, I want to make a ton of money, and I feel like America's the place to do it, you know?
But even then, like, the middle class used to be the step.
Yeah.
You know, it was the stepping stone to that. I wanted to throw in a little stat by Gentleman Tim Noah from the New Republic, he wrote an entire paper about the Great Divergence and how in the 70s many economic policies and social things happened to mess us up and make it so that the American dream was much more infinitesimally tinier, more difficult to reach. One thing is the talking about how much this income inequality is passed on from one generation to the next, and he says that in the next generation, the income inequality should rise by a quarter,
Whew.
a fourth.
Wow, let that sink in. That's
a good chunk of what we're doing in one generation.
Ugh.
It is going to be
That's how
that
fast
much
it's
harder
happening.
for you to leave the place where your parents are from.
Yeah. I mean, there's current stats right now to back that up. One of the stats that we found in a New Yorker article was that 70% of people born in the bottom fifth of income distribution never make it to the middle class. That's 70%. Most people who are poor will stay poor. Fewer than 10% get into the top, and 40% are still poor as adults.
And again, to mix that with the American dream, the American dream would tell you that those 70% of people are not working
Hard enough.
or hard at all.
Yeah.
Or they're not working, or they're on welfare.
They're lazy. Yeah.
Many of them are on welfare and are working several jobs. And they're working the difficult jobs.
Yeah. They're working the stuff we don't want to do. You know?
Can't.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the interesting dichotomy of all of this, I feel like, is, you know, if the goal is to make a lot of money, then yes, the dream is still alive. But if the goal is something more realistic, like being comfortable and being able to provide for your family, then that just isn't happening
Also,
right
if
now.
the goal is to make a lot of money, no, the dream is not alive.
Yeah. Well, that's what keeps the dream alive for people.
Well,
is
yeah, I'm just saying it's the same thing as in every country and every generation, so it might as well not be a thing that exists.
Yeah, and somehow we still have it. We still have it as a thing. And that's the crazy thing is it's what was this? We watched this John Oliver clip, I remember, where we had a politician say, "We are a country of the haves and the soon to haves." And that's
solid rhetoric.
Yep, and that's what keeps the dream alive. And we keep calling it a dream because that's what it is. You know, it's not the reality. But we also, if we think in that vein of the haves and the soon to haves, then we don't want to bash rich people. We don't want to raise taxes on rich people because one day maybe we'll be a rich person.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of the mentality right now is,
We don't want to make it harder for ourselves when we do make all that money.
yeah, that we're not going to make. You know, it's just the crazy circular logic of there's always that dream, that hope of we can make it big one day. It's become, and I think part of it is because we've wanted to go beyond middle class even, that, you know, the gap is so huge too.
Right, because then it gets very competitive and we get real zero-summy about it because
Yeah.
we can't all be in the mansion.
Yeah, we can't all be the wealthy people. So then what happens to the middle? If people aren't satisfied with the middle, if the original American dream was, you know, have a roof over your head and be able to feed your family, we could all do that. And we were all doing that before this great divergence was happening. I mean, not all of us, but the gap was much smaller, you know?
That's funny. That's like another sports parallel. I realize the sports middle class is now a shrinking thing these days.
Ooh, the like minor leagues and stuff?
No, not the
or-
minor leagues. I'm talking about this is a social thing. Like in the sports games,
Oh.
you know, some teams are always good, some teams are always bad,
Yeah.
some are in the middle, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
People are tired of that. They the term that is used, which is crazy when we're talking about multi-million-dollar companies that have millions and millions of fans, mediocre. If you don't win the title, you're mediocre. And
Wow.
what you should do is,
But only
I mean,
one person can win the title. Only
yeah,
one team.
exactly. But if you
Ooh.
don't win the title, you're mediocre. My favorite team in basketball, the Sixers, what we decided to do is after about 8 or so years of being mediocre, like kind of make the playoffs,
Yeah,
maybe not.
yeah.
We're okay.
Haven't won a title, whatever.
Everyone, yeah. Well, in a while we won.
Yeah.
But what they did is they they traded away all the okay to good players, drafted a bunch of young guys, and we're absolutely terrible. And everybody's okay with that.
On purpose,
On
right?
purpose, because we're looking for a chance, a shot at getting a great player so that we can then be great. We have the potential, my team that I like to root for, of being the worst team in the league for the next 10 years if the shots don't pan out.
Right. That's a big gamble.
But it's better in most fans' minds. I mean, I know I've done a lot of reading and seeing how people feel to do that shot, than to be middle class, than to be okay, than to go 500.
Yeah. Then
You know,
have
battering
enough.
500 average people talk about
Yeah,
in baseball.
yeah.
Everyone wants to bat 1,000 now, or else it's not worth it.
Wow.
So that's it's an entire mental change, I believe.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that a lot more now with the American Dream. That's a great analogy, because it is that interesting set of extremes, you know, of it's all or nothing. It's like nobody wants to just be in the middle. Nobody wants to be middle class. And so that means that you're either in the 1% or you're poor.
Yeah.
That's what it's becoming. That's what it's moving towards right now. You know, and I think that, you know, we were talking about, you know, movies earlier and a lot of movies being made about this. And the thing is, too, like, one of the things we were also reading about was just the idea that, that this is a great quote from a Cracked article. If you are going to lie to somebody with scientific data, you have to manipulate it or hide parts of it or change the context. So if you're going to try and trick somebody by manipulating, you know, data or stats or anything,
Well, yeah,
it's
because
work.
statistics can be a lie.
Yeah. If you're going to mislead someone with an anecdote, all you have to do is tell them about it. And this is because... Right? It's like, oh, I heard the story once about this guy, though. Oh, the American Dream isn't real. But what about my friend whose parents blah, 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 blah? Or what about this kid who blah, 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 blah?
Well, actually, one of the UC Davis professor put together a bunch of information, similar to all the stuff that we're talking about now, similar to the paper on the Great Divergence and all that, about the current state of income inequality and about the likelihood of people succeeding in the American Dream and how it's basically a myth. That is a harmful myth that is used to keep people down. And as he explains all of this to his UC Davis students, they immediately reject it.
Yeah.
And start coming up with anecdotal ideas of why, anecdotal being, you know, just a little personal story to them.
Yeah.
More vocab words. They all have a little story that they've heard.
Of course, we all do. And I think that, and here's what's interesting is thinking anecdotally comes naturally to our brains, but thinking scientifically and statistically does not.
Can I throw another wonderful quote?
Yeah.
This is I guess you were talking about the Michael Moore things. Do you want to give that one?
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, the Michael Moore quote.
Well, I was going to say the more incendiary one about, you know, talking about the takeover has happened under our noses. We've been force-fed some mighty powerful drugs to keep us quiet while we're being mugged by lawless gangs of CEOs. One of these drugs is called fear, and the other is called horatioalgia. Because that's how you actually roll, and control somebody's mind. It's not just through fear. You know the whole fear torture thing? You also got to have a carrot with that fear.
Yeah. You have to have fear to keep people down and listening to you, but you also have to have that horatioalgia like vision of hope. You could be where I am one day. Listen to my story. Listen to where I came from. And that's the crazy thing is because our brains think in anecdotes, a single incident actually means more to our brain than a million stories without any faces to them.
To clarify, one of the reasons why we will fall for a BS story is because our brains see things in terms of story. We are unable to parse things out mathematically without having an equation in front of us. And those of my people who are human beings, you guys know how much you love mathematical equations more than sentences.
Yeah.
Not at all. So, a good sentence, especially a sentence that says something that you want to believe, it's going to work. Hey, how many? I know I've been up on social media more than I normally have been because I'm very interested in reading about what's going on in this country with our police and our relationship with our black men and women and how we're being treated. And I know, even as impartial as I would like to be, I click on a link, and when the first sentence says something that I don't agree with, it takes a mighty strong amount of willpower not to turn away from it.
No, it's so true. You want to roll with the thing that you want to believe in.
The narrative is something that we create together.
Yeah. And the American dream is a narrative that we've been taught and spoon-fed our entire lives, even though statistically and economically people have done studies on it, and it's just not possible anymore. It's getting to that point. I mean, you heard me say 70% of people who are poor never make it to the middle class. But I also have a story about my friend whose grandparents came from Israel with nothing on their shirts on their backs. They worked really hard. They did smart things, like they got a duplex and only lived in one half. 40 years later, they were able to buy each of their children a home. Isn't that amazing?
That's pretty.
Isn't that amazing?
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's great, right? 70% of people who are poor never make it to the middle class. That's the reality. This is an exception and not a rule, but this is a story you're going to remember. That's how our brains work.
That's the thing. And the other thing about the exceptions to the rule seeming like the rule is we forget so many pieces of extenuating circumstances. Again, talking about our art and how we fail with our art. When we begin to talk about coming from nothing, most of these films that you see, most of these artists that you hear narratives from, who say that they are overnight successes, who say, even if they're not overnight successes, they started with no money and no nothing. The amount of investors these people have will shock you.
Yeah. People were behind them to get to this point, you know?
It really doesn't happen. Even in, as we were saying, you know, how our arts often tend to be like lottery type of situation. This talented artist did not just sell tapes out of the trunk of their car, and that's how it worked. For it to really work, there has to be somebody who bought that tape who has a bunch of money and put it behind you, or else you're just selling a bunch of tapes. Yeah,
you still be behind that car, you know? And the other reality is with the United States is that in America, it's actually harder to move up than other industrialized nations. Japan, Germany, Australia, Scandinavian nations, Sweden, Norway. It's much easier to move from the poor class to the middle class in those countries.
So they have a better version or a more statistically doable version of the American dream than America does.
Yes, yeah. They actually have the American dream as a reality.
So it's the German dream.
It's or the Japanese dream.
Or the Japanese
Australian
dream.
too.
Go ahead, Axis powers, huh?
Ooh.
That's crazy, right?
That's saying a lot, isn't it? That they and part of
I
it
felt the need
is
to mention Axis powers specifically because these countries were in economic hell.
Yes.
60 years ago.
Oh
they
my
were in
God.
such disarray. They
well, and it
lost
wasn't even
hard.
economic hell. Their shit was blown up.
Well, yeah, but I mean, yes, we know about their stuff blown up, but I'm saying they
had to rebuild everything from literally nothing.
They make all that money from Godzilla movies.
Yeah. I don't know what Germany was doing without that Godzilla movie. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And one of the other interesting statistics that I read about Germany was that most people don't own their homes. It's just easier to rent, so they don't bother. It's nice to rent. Yeah, that's the other part of the American dream is owning property.
Well, isn't it that a lot of this, like we're saying, the American dream being an older concept that we still are holding on to even though the circumstances are different, a lot of this is clinging to old stuff.
Yes.
Because the concept of owning property, that's a feudal England thing.
Yeah.
Where if you owned property, you were wealthy.
Right.
Period.
You couldn't own property as a peasant.
Yeah, if you were a peasant, you didn't own property. So the way that you got out of your class was by getting property. And nowadays, I mean, in America, with our property tax that we have to pay and with eminent domain and all these other ways that you can lose property that you have already bought and owned the deed to, it often feels like buying a song on iTunes. Like, I guess I own it, but only as long as you say so, which is a very different situation in terms of your relationship with the government. A wealthy landowner in feudal England could tell the king to go screw off because this was theirs.
Yeah. And
can't say that here. If they want a highway here, they will make a highway here in front of your house.
Yeah, or over your house.
You know what I'm saying?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, and there's a couple reasons why this gap is growing and the American dream is kind of disappearing. If it ever really was here in the way that a lot of people think of it now, the idea of becoming extremely wealthy from nothing. Part of it is
Through your hard work.
Through your hard work, yeah. And part of it is just the fact that you are economically disadvantaged, and it's because the gap is growing wider. Rich people can afford more and more tutors and better education for their kids and extracurricular activities, and poor people just can't. That's the bottom line,
Well, not only can afford more educational opportunities, but provide an environment and system where learning is accepted, where patience
and celebrated.
Well, and not only learning is celebrated, but patience with learning is celebrated, which is a very important thing. Kids, when you're poor and you're good at a thing, people will have your back and rush to help build you up so that everybody can roll with you, because for altruistic or for selfish reasons. But only in an environment where there is patience, like we had last week. We were talking about what was the gentleman's name who made 11,000 into
Timothy Sykes.
Yeah, Timothy Sykes. Only with patience in learning were you able to really understand the skills and fundamentals to be truly and consistently successful.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that in an environment where you're constantly figuring out where the next meal is.
You know why rags to riches stories often end up back in rags? Because the people didn't learn anything. They may have done a thing that made them money, but they didn't learn how to make money. So when the luck or the opportunity runs out, there's no way to move on with that.
Yeah, they didn't leave with the actual education part of it.
You think Mike Tyson is a dummy for making a bunch of money and losing it? Mike Tyson was a poor kid from Brooklyn who was good at hitting people. So what was he going to do now that he's a rich kid from Brooklyn who was good at hitting people?
Yeah.
Donald Trump is a moron who started out with tons of his parents' money. And despite him being quite a moron, I don't know if you've ever heard him speak or seen him write things.
Or looked at his hair.
Despite being such a monstrous moron, he was raised in an environment that gave him enough fundamentals that he will always be okay.
Yeah.
Plus, he's got enough money and enough people who have his back will always
that's the
be
other
okay.
thing. Yeah.
All of these things together. That's the thing. Even being a dumb rich kid. What was this about kids from a higher economic background who have less education still being able to have a better job of holding on to their money?
Oh, yeah. So if you're a white kid who didn't finish high school, you have a higher chance of getting a good job than a black kid who did finish college.
All right, now we're jumping into the racial stuff too. But like all of the things that I know that sounded like a bit of a jump there, but we're discussing race in terms of inherent economic advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
And however you feel, we can definitely have that discussion, but however you feel about where we are racially today, you definitely know that the economic advantages on a statistical level favor white males more so than minorities.
Yeah. I mean, the patience thing is really critical, and it's patience and having the resources to wait and having the resources to not be desperate.
Because you could not be so good at your thing. Your art, your job
but if you got
type
all
thing.
the time in the world,
Yeah, if you have time to work on it, it doesn't matter if you suck when you're 13, because by the time you're 18, you will be good enough to be able to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You may not be great, but you won't have to be.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's already a disadvantage financially to people who are poor versus people who are rich for making it. And that's, that's always been the case, but jumping from poor to rich is a much bigger jump than jumping from poor to middle class. And that's what people were striving for before the great divergence happened.
Well, and it's important to note that while we understand in our heads, yes, poor people have disadvantage, rich people have advantage. It's not that I have less money right now, so I can't go invest in a thing. That's not the only advantage that occurs with the poor.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and the other thing is just how the system is set up, period. So the government has a lot of deductions and like tax rules in place for people to build wealth. If you buy a house, you get a mortgage tax deduction. There's capital gains tax. If you're an investor, your capital gains tax is lower than, your earned income tax. And so there's a lot of loopholes in place, but those are mostly reserved for people in the middle class or upper classes. If you try and build wealth as a poor person, guess what? Your government assistance goes away. If you have savings, if you make more than X amount of dollars, you lose your welfare. You lose the thing that's feeding your kids. So the incentive to actually rise above your station, quote unquote, is gone. Why wouldn't you just stay in welfare if making $10 an hour instead of $7 an hour means you don't get food stamps or health care? What would you do?
Yes. And again, with their idea of, things being more mediocre. I mean, this is also because there's so many things. I would really suggest seeking out The Great Divergence by Timothy Noah and checking out the specifics of why not only our education, but our labor issues, the way we've changed how we do labor has messed with our ability to move up, our ability to change our class, our inability to keep our minimum wage in line with inflation, which only seems to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, not even minimum wage. People's salaries, period,
Yes.
are not keeping in line with inflation. The fact that we haven't been able to do that for the middle class even is another reason why the gap is growing larger.
In the 1900s, in those early decades, the amount of the money that people in the middle class was regularly doubling or increasing onefold. And now it's amazingly far behind inflation and in some cases actually shrinking.
Yeah. It's at the very most flatlined at this point from the statistics that we've seen.
And even though we've seen a lot of great strides, and again, we'll try not to hit you too hard with a ton of statistics. Like I said, check out The Great Divergence for a lot of solid breakdown. But we've looked at these great strides that Black Americans and that women have been making, and really all we've been seeing with these great strides is treading water. Yeah.
And it's also shown that, white males have not been keeping up. That's really what the story that it's been telling is, women and minorities are making great strides at the same time.
Modest strides.
Yeah, modest strides, but strides nonetheless. And in comparison, white males aren't making those same strides.
And are not making as much money.
Yeah, period. So I think it's time to go into another song. More songs from our sound provider. And after this, I think it's important to really talk about why you need to think about the American dream in the context of things like race and social class.
So earlier we are playing a brother named John Gives with his song American Dream. We're about to play another rap song called American Dream. This is from a, if not self-proclaimed, then at least his homies proclaim, conspiracy theory rapper, which is an interesting distinction.
Oh.
Yeah. His name is Fetty Profound, and this is his version of the American Dream. Tell me if you think that this one is any different, and we'll check with you in about 3 or 4 minutes. It's Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio.
Why bother wasting breath on subjects that aren't important? Speak the truth till my death, no opinions from reporters. They wanna lock us and extort us, rob us, distort us, treat us like cattle they bred before us. But every now and then the people wise up, they start to rise up, fight and give their lives up. While you watch television to distort your elemental vision, you in a mental prison from this effective system. This collectivism trap a parametric prism. You always knew you were the product of their inner mission. Now feel your inner wisdom. You wanna go against them. You want the answers to the planet and the solar system. To no avail, but you could never fail. Now everything happens for reasons you already there. Now everybody's listening, but no one ever hears. Everything seems distant in a land that's never theirs. At least leave me my pride, can't touch my soul. I free the world with my rhymes off these blunts I roll. You control the whole globe with your math and gold. I'll expose the whole show and let the mass impose. These imperialists control both bottoms and tops of pyramids. Watching every move you make, testing the experiment. Even with free will, you sell for free by clicking I agree on your iOS 4G day you'll wake up and see this ain't all you can be. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see things aren't what they seem. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see this ain't all you can be. They use these abstract words and apply them with the picture to envision a meaning in your head until they get you. And once they've got you, they've convinced you. You don't have to think for yourself. Just let the government help. Let the television teach you. Don't trouble yourself. You're in the land of the free. Go ahead and double your wealth. While overseas people are starving and dying hopelessly. Four-eye potency closes third eye totally, openly, against socially controlled diplomacy. That's supposed to be supposedly helping us globally. Now you can train all the sheep to sleep and teach thieves to cheat, but nothing can stop a man from his freedom and belief. You a thought in a dream, that's a plot in a scheme that was bought by a team. Got you caught in between this 1984 thought criminal, fighting all the symbols and subliminals. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see things aren't what they seem. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see this ain't all you can be. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see things aren't what they seem. You're just a thought in the American dream. One day you'll wake up and see this ain't all you can be.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Welcome back to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio. That was another song called American Dream, this time by Fetty Profound. And so what did you think between the two American Dreams? Which one sounded more real or more accurate? Was it the one with the uplifting gospel singing?
Or the one quoting The Matrix?
Yeah. Well, it was nice. One of them started
Wow.
out quoting Obama,
Yeah.
who clearly was talking out the side of his neck at best.
Yeah.
with that
Back in
speech.
2008 when he was like, oh, everything's great.
Well, it's funny because, it doesn't jive with a lot of his other stuff because Obama has been really solid about talking about inequality.
Yeah, and the lack of social mobility nowadays. It's one of his biggest concerns.
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of where we are in our understanding of the American dream, where we're basically between a typical unrealistic politician speech and quoting The Matrix.
And you are a slave in your own mind.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean,
that's kind of what it is, and that's a big part of it too. Is we had talked about the two different American dreams. One being able to provide for your family, which I feel like that for the most part, most people can accomplish, and the other, this pie in the sky, I'm going to become incredibly wealthy one day, American dream. That is really what's keeping it alive. That's keeping us in a place where middle class isn't good enough. You know, being able to provide for your family isn't good enough.
and it's the two of them together that make the first one, which is accomplishable, more difficult to accomplish.
Yeah.
More of us are trying to get rich, which is making it harder for more of us to be able to pay for our family to be taken care of. It's just like when you're on the highway.
You said
know,
that
when
so
you're on the
well.
highway and
Yes.
you hit the brakes and you mess up traffic behind you for
Yep.
several miles. There's like a math
Yeah,
album
yeah.
on that. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Going so hard and doing this all or nothing is screwing everybody.
Yes, and that's the thing too, is the idea of getting incredibly wealthy is, yeah, of course not everyone can do it. So you are screwing everybody to get there on some level, you know? You are doing what it takes. It's a very individualistic, selfish kind of way to go about the American dream.
And most likely is going to bite you in the end.
Yeah, because the amount of luck and networking and people that you need to have behind you to get there is a lot more than most people have. You know, there's a reason why not everybody is part of the 1%. There's a reason why there is a 1%. And I mean, one of the other things that I want to go back to the Horatio Alger myth too, because I think you were mentioning this during the song, is the fact that it's not just that it's like, oh, it's a cute story that, you know, that we kind of believe. It's that we believe it and it is harming us. The fact that we believe that this is a possibility for us is harmful to our well-being. We're seeing it happen. People can't stay middle class.
Because we're willing to bet it all.
Yeah, we're willing to give up everything for the possibility of striking it rich.
And those of us who don't have a lot but could build that into a solid seed are instead trying to make a bigger leap.
Yeah. And I mean, the people who probably...
Subprime loans, anybody?
Yeah, right?
And,
yeah,
again,
you
that's
can own a
easy to
house.
take advantage of.
Yeah, straight up. And without the education and the patience, like you were saying earlier, you know? With the, like, I just want this now. That was the problem with that Stuyvesant kid, too. He wanted the fame and the glory and the money before he actually did any of the things to get there. And went through any of the hard stuff.
Does this sound familiar, entertainment people?
For real. That's the big thing. And the other thing that the American dream doesn't take into account is the context of your life. If you are a minority or a woman, shit is harder in America. Period. You know? And it's a bit insulting.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and everywhere.
Even if your country is full of minorities and women.
Yeah. If you're a darker minority...
Wait, most countries are full of women. You know.
Half, at least, right? Not half the countries, half the people.
Although, I would like to say one interesting stat I noticed, that why women are doing better than other minorities or are increasing at a higher rate and have a higher projected increase is because more women are getting educated than men.
Ooh.
What is it? It's about a 60-40,
60-40, right?
Well, it's a little higher than a 60-40 split right now in favor of women. I think it's something like 37% for men.
Ooh.
And enrollment is expected to continue to shift in that direction.
Wow, that's incredible. So more patience in education. That's what it's taking right now. The thing about race is, and the thing about not taking into account with this Horatio Alger thing, is the idea that you can just, you know, work really hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, except for that the entire system is set up to keep you down.
Booker T. Washington was always wrong.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we found this amazing article by this guy named Harlan Dalton. He's a black professor of law at Yale, and he's an ordained minister. He is adamant about the Alger myth. He's adamant about the Alger myth being completely wrong. His big thing is, and I just want to quote this directly because I think it says it so perfectly. In a nutshell, my objection to the Alger myth is that it serves to maintain the racial pecking order. It does so by mentally bypassing the role of race in American society, and it does so by fostering beliefs that themselves serve to trivialize, if not erase, the social meaning of race. The Alger myth encourages people to blink at the many barriers to racial equality, historical, structural, and institutional, that litter the social landscape.
This is a black pastor who ended up becoming a professor at Yale.
Yeah.
I think if anyone understands these concepts that he just spoke of, it is him.
Yeah. He's lived through this, and he's like, this is all BS. It is not that easy, and it is not something that you can just do by working really hard.
Well, and more importantly, you cannot ignore the factors that your station, and that being your ethnic background, your financial background, your place of living, all of the things that deal with race, they can't be ignored. It's still important to what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And if you do ignore them, then you're either blind or you don't think very highly of these people.
It's again one of the it's an education and an understanding thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where it's much easier to believe that anyone can make it if they just try hard enough. You know, it's a much easier story to swallow than you were brought over as slaves and then you were subject to incredible discrimination and you are a big part of the prison industrial complex existing. But if you just work so hard and you just have such determination and persistence, you can make it. You don't have to be that person.
Hey, chat room folks, we were discussing possibly talking a little bit about the prison industrial complex. I think it's an important thing, and I think that I know I've been learning new stuff about it. I'm fairly sure a lot of you guys don't know certain parts, so let me know if y'all are interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely want to do a show on that because that's a big part of why this American dream also isn't possible for a lot of people. 1 in 100 people are in jail right now in America. I just heard that stat and I was like, what?
Yeah.
1 in 100 people. That's a lot of people. There's more people in jail here than in China.
That's crazy.
American dream, my ass. Come on now. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, I mean, I think we're running out of time. We've gotten a little ranty. How much time do we have left?
We have enough time. Tell us about something.
I think that we want to just end with the idea of changing the focus of public policy. Like we said before, the idea that the middle class is shrinking is because the standard of living for the middle class is shrinking, you know?
And our economic focus is no longer on creating and building a strong middle class.
Yeah, exactly.
We have shift jobs overseas. Mm-hmm. We have changed how we treat our businesses in terms of how we treat the hierarchy, how we treat the higher-ups, and when we feel the need to pay for things. We've changed how technology has changed how we treat labor, but our labor policies have not changed to reflect that new reality because technology has always been a thing that exists. We've just adjusted better in the past. Mm-hmm. Our public policies are ones that are either not keeping up with the times or are being forcefully held on to by the folks that already have the money.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the way that a lot of the countries that we mentioned, like Japan and Germany and Australia, keep a strong middle class is because they tax the rich, you know? They put higher taxes on the rich and redistribute the wealth in a way that gives people, you know, universal health care, for instance.
I wanted to throw in a tax bracket quick thing. Again, really look up The Great Divergence. It's a short read. It's about 40 pages. It's wonderful. Tim Noah of the New Republic. It's a really fair and balanced. It removes a lot of the concept of politics and all of that. But that being said, so y'all know an actor named Ronald Reagan. Before his time, the top income bracket, the highest amount of tax-paying bracket, was at the 70% or higher.
So you could be paying 70% of your income to taxes.
Well, no. The 70% percentile of people.
Oh, okay.
Were paying the highest amount of taxes.
Uh-huh.
And that fluctuated between 70s and 80s, and apparently during Mad Men times it was even in the high 90s. So they really taxed the super rich super hard. Mm-hmm. And then Reagan brought it down to about 28%.
So the highest
So
tax?
you only need to be in the lowest quarter. If you were outside of the lowest quarter of people who earn money, you are now the rich person being taxed the highest tax rate. Clinton fought hard and brought it back to about 41. And it's been in the 30s to 40s ever since.
If you're in the 41st percentile.
Yes.
You were paying the highest tax rate.
Exactly. So what that is saying that over the course of about 30 years, we cut in half what we consider our highest tax bracket.
So if you were making $400,000 in the 1950s, you were in the highest tax bracket, in that 90th percent. And they haven't changed it. So if you're making $400,000 today, which is a significantly less buying power, essentially, you're also getting taxed the same as the person who's making $15 million.
Yeah.
Woo!
Well,
Talk about cutting out the middle class.
Exactly. Well, because what that does is if you are just above those tax lines, if you are doing well but not doing terribly well, they're taking a huge chunk of your money. And
that
again,
means a lot more to you in that tax bracket.
Well, and again, you got to go harder for all the money.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that position, you have to make the leap.
Yep, you're already there, you know?
That's a very small and less consequential of some of the reasons that you can find in this paper. I just wanted to put that one out there because it's really simple and crazy.
Yeah, it makes such a big difference. The tax rates haven't increased with inflation either. Nothing's kept up with inflation, it turns out.
Yay.
And I mean, the biggest thing is, and the New Yorker had a great, in their article called The Myth of, what is it called? The Mobility Myth. One of the things that they pointed out that was really great is it wasn't about the idea of social mobility or changing your social class. It's the idea of raising the standard of living within each social class.
Yes.
So the focus shouldn't be climbing a ladder. The focus should be raising the standard for the rung that you're already on. You know, it should be about redistributing wealth on some level where everyone can provide for their families. That is the original American dream.
That sounds like the kind of American dream I'm into.
Yeah, me too. It's the move.
All right, so let's get on out of here. Why don't we get on out of here?
Yeah.
We had a couple of songs about the American dream and what the American dream is. And I've got a new joint. It's a new single from an MC. I've been waiting to hear this record. And this is about being a civilian. It's called Civil I Am. It deals with a lot of stuff that we're dealing with. It's by my brother and yours, Megascypher. Y'all should go and cop the album. It's available. I believe it's on iTunes, but it's definitely available on Bandcamp. And you can holler at me, holler at him, holler at all the folks. And we will see you next week, hopefully with a little bit less stressful money saving, taking, getting situation. We'll talk to you soon. It's Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio. Peace.
I stand for change, march for peace. Rap what I see and don't rep the beast. I got more than belief when it's freedom of speech, like Malcolm X on the Sudanese beach. Witness injustice, got to speak. Each one teach one and got to reach. Move the streets, use these beats. Beat my game as a popular leech on cheats and hoods and suits and ties. Disguises, caring concern guys. You legalize genocide by design is amplified. I turn up. Air out your lies with shocking truths on rhythmic lines. These loving vibes and magnifying simple terms. I'm civilized. I am a civilized man. I have a family. Together we have plans. I work hard, I vote. I want to buy land and do my civic duties. Civil I am. I break my neck for pay that breaks my back when I pay my bills. Check my resume that says I rap and I can aim and kill. Plus I'm educated. I ain't waiting on a label deal. These words are venerated. They the greatest that you'll ever hear. This is for my vets in here, my family and servicemen, my active duty children, hoping parents don't deploy again. This one's for the parents of the children that were lost in war. Soldiers or civilians or the victims of an unjust law. Stand your ground, don't back down. When they come, gather round. It's here and now. Modern cities run like old southern towns. Road police unaccountable to human decency. You'll hear this plea or ignore it based upon your frequency. I am a civilized man. I have a family. Together we have plans. I work hard, I vote. I want to buy land and do my civic duties. Civil I am. There's more than meets the eye. I need more than a piece of pie. We need more than a slice of cake. Or this whole body gon' die. Given choice and choose a lie. Give them voice and who deny. Maybe I'm trapped in time. Maybe I'm occupied. But I won't stand by or identify with systems that oppress a man. I call out lies and rhyme schemes filled with wisdom that's a stretched land. I need extra hands to hold the lights, fill the venues, help sketch the plan. I'm just one voice for the many. Civil I am. Got my hands up. Please don't shoot. Stop shooting. Stop shooting. Put your hands up. 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 Put your